Oh, racing. Doesn't simply the mention of the word just start the adrenaline pumping already? Well, I gotta say, I'm a sucker for a racing game now and then. I have been for a number of years now. Ever since I was a kid, I've always wondered at the beautiful works of art that could come from a car manufacturer. And I wondered if I would ever even get the privilege of stepping foot into one of the absolute beasts. Little did I know, 15 years later, I still wouldn't have got the chance, but I digress. I dreamed of becoming an F1 driver, racing at speeds only in reach by few men and few cars. But as that dream turned into a distant memory around the same time, little old me just got his first games console, the holy grail of family gaming, the Nintendo Wii. As much as people love the Wii for its flagship titles such as Mario, 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 and of course Hasbro Family Game Night 3, the Wii had a lot of great third-party titles too, especially racing games. These games were the first ones to attract my tiny little mind to gaming because all of a sudden I could use the virtual world of cars as a substitute for all of those far-fetched dreams I had as a kid. So as Christmas days and birthdays passed me by, I amassed quite the collection of classic racing games, hidden gems that I randomly found in a shop, and some whack-ass ports that somehow made it onto the Wii, the latter of which I find the most interesting. See, it's not uncommon for developers to outsource their IPs to different companies that develop games for different consoles. We've seen it a million times, but the Need for Speed franchise seems to have a preference to it at this point. If it's not on Xbox or PlayStation, EA panics like a lost kid in a supermarket and throws all their toys out the pram. The people that catch them before they hit the floor are the devs tasked with taking a AAA game and moving it to a platform with significant processing deficits. I didn't have too much experience with the majority of these games, except for one. See, the thing is, there's always been a weird hit or miss with racing games. Some of them can feel like the pinnacle of gaming art, and other times they feel more or less like a mobile game. Anyone remember Need for Speed The Run? Yeah, I didn't think so. The Run was released back in 2011 as the 18th NFS installment for the PS3, Xbox 360, PC, Wii, and DS. Can you already see the problem here? On PlayStation, Xbox, and PC, the game was a pretty big success. EA's Blackbox had previously struck gold with fans and made some of the most loved Need for Speed games to date. Although the game followed a level structure as opposed to the open world structure in the past few Blackbox games, they still made it work. The story was quite interesting, the soundtrack, however cliché, fitted the game nicely, the car selection was decent, although actually selecting these cars was the hardest goddamn thing in the game. What? You want the car selection before you start a race? No! You will have it at a completely random point in the middle of a race in a petrol station you're likely to miss. I have to say, it made it that slight bit more realistic, but that did not make up for the unpredictability. The game was pretty good overall, good graphics, good handling, decent gameplay, but I didn't play this version. Oh no. I played something far more confusing. See, at some point along the line, EA said, ah yes, the Wii. We put NFS Carbon on the Wii. We put Pro Street on the Wii. We put Undercover on the Wii. That means we can put Hot Pursuit and The Run on the Wii. It's safe to say that that was never going to work with the Wii's capability, so why not match the Wii with something with insultingly less power? As it turns out, Blackbox never even touched the Wii version. Or the DS version. EA had outsourced the development to Firebrand Games, who is a DS developer. So the Wii got a DS game! This is what the fuck I played. Just compare the two for a minute. This is like the worst case scenario. To call this minimalist would be a compliment. Even booting up the game, the entire UI looks dead. All of the run's original features had either been stripped back to the point of no return, or they had disappeared completely. For example, there was no more online multiplayer, as it wasn't compatible with the game it was trying to be, and it wasn't even compatible with the DS version, because it apparently can't handle Wi-Fi either. Instead, we got the standard 2-player split screen. The story mode was still the run in essence, but the story itself was entirely different, and the cutscenes were replaced with a comic book. But the biggest robbery of them all was the graphics. Gone were the picturesque cityscapes, mountain roads and canyon highways. We were left with cars that looked like their headlights were stuck on like a sticker, and a map that could have been ripped from Crazy Taxi. It's charming, but it's not the run. Not just that, but the linear racing style becomes more linear. Now, instead of the cool levels in the main game, the Wii version had you resorting to hold go, steer car, don't crash, finish first every time kind of gameplay, having you drive on an array of map styles such as 6-lane highway, 6-lane highway, 6-lane highway, not to mention the 2010's plague of QuickTime events that are shoved in the game carelessly and have absolutely no business being there at all. It is very confusing. Just let me make a turn myself. The UI definitely looks like it was made for the DS because everything is freaking huge and up in your face. Not to mention the cartoon-ass HUD and absolutely pointless minimap. And it wasn't even like it had a short development window. No, this game was in development for 3 years, notably longer than any Need for Speed game at the time. Let's take a bit of a closer look. The cops are good in the sense that they provide some of the only actual challenges in the game. The other racers, aside from rubber banding everywhere, don't really race. They just drive on a mapped route. So the cops give the player something to actually think about whilst they're driving. They are very kind of smash and grab, but that is the kind of action that the game encourages in return from the player. It's a little bit of a shame that they don't have more HP, otherwise they really would be something to worry about. In multiplayer, however, the tables are turned completely. In the Cops vs Racer mode, you have the choice to become a cop. All players can be cops, or none, or a specific selection, which is a flexibility that I quite like. And then you go head to head, trying to complete the race as normal, with the added complication of having your friends ram you arse first at 200 miles an hour. For this reason, you have to pick your car very carefully if you're a racer, because for some reason, it is impossible to survive against the cop players if they're playing. In my experience, I was dead in 2 hits and couldn't get through even half the race. The cops, on the other hand, are impossible to take down. For some reason, if the cop is AI, they're usually dead within the same amount of hits as you. If they're a real player, any damage you do to them is done double to you. So it's better to try and outrun them than take them on, unless you want to be sentenced to death in 20 seconds flat. All this considered, the game does give each player 3 lives to complete the race with. This is a little bit broken in story mode, considering you have 3 lives. It's not that easy to lose HP unless you're driving like you've taken cocaine. And the races aren't long enough for that amount of damage to be done over the duration of a whole race. In multiplayer, those lives are the only saving grace you have to even attempt to make it to the end of the race if you're playing Cops vs Racers. At some point in every race, there's a certain part where you're thrust into a linear QuickTime sequence and forced to evade objects, make a tight gap, fight rivals, etc. These are stupid, and I don't like them. Simple as that. Yes, it might be more immersive and might better fit the Michael Bay-ass theme they're going for, but ultimately, it ruins any kind of racing you're actually trying to do. It's the equivalent of dropping in an unskippable ad instead. The other QuickTime event is pretty harmless and involves pressing certain directions on the D-pad to either gain a speed boost or make a sharp U-turn. But it is very cliche and was probably not necessary. I say that looking back on it now, but when I was a kid, I thought it was so cool. However, fuck the boulder level. Why does the car steer like a fucking yacht only in the bit that I need it to maneuver more nimble? There are some events that require you to try and catch a specific rival racer, and these are very questionable to say the least, mainly because they require the pacing of the race to be predetermined because of the QuickTime events nearer the end of the race that are part of the story. The problem with this is it means that if you actually want to try and catch the guy before the QuickTime events, which apparently is possible, you have to drive like somebody cut the brakes. If you take your foot off the throttle for 1 second, make one bad drift, take one corner too wide, or even worse, hit traffic that comes at the worst possible times, you've lost all hope. It's not a bad thing that they try to funnel you into these QuickTime events. I understand it makes for better immersion into the storyline, but at least give us the chance to feel like we're good at the game. And despite all this, I still 100%ed the game. I could pull that it was all I had at the time card, but truth be told, I kind of enjoyed it. It had a similar vibe to most of the other games I was playing on the Wii at the time, and it was one of the first racing games I had on the Wii, so in my tiny mind, it was actually really, really cool. Ramming cops off the road and trading paint with other racers, doing some Michael Bay-ass jumps off bridges and impossible U-turns. It was simple, but for a kid like me, I was a badass for a day. There is one more thing. Out of pure curiosity, I went and looked at Firebrand's list of games to see what else they had developed, and I was quite surprised to see a long list of racing games ported from the DS to the Wii that I used to play. Especially one. Looking back on it now, you can really tell. So I thought I'd sidetrack quickly for the end of the video and make a quick honourable mention. This game I didn't play for very long, partly because it was actually probably my first sim racer, little did I know, and therefore 8-year-old me found it impossible, and also partly because it was not a very good game. You would think that having the Wii's gyroscopic motion controls would prove a great advantage when trying to handle a Ferrari, but you would be silly and stupid. That would be like swapping Lewis Hamilton's steering wheel with one from a Little Tikes car. Oversteer and understeer ended up blending into one whenever you went round a corner. If you turned, your very expensive race car would handle similarly to a boat, and if you compensated by turning even more, you would lose every single possible bit of grip you had and spin out. I sold my copy of Ferrari Challenge a long time ago, but the one thing that still keeps that game in my memory is the menu music. Holy shit, it's like walking into an Elden Ring boss battle.